William Ayres, To Teach: The Journey of a Teacher. Seeing the student, we are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. Teaching is an interactive practice that begins and ends with seeing the student. This is more complicated than it seems, for it is something that is ongoing and never completely finished. The student grows and changes, the teacher learns, the situation shifts, and seeing becomes an ever-evolving challenge as layers of mystification and obfuscation are peeled away as the student becomes more fully present to the teacher. Experiences and ways of thinking and knowing that were initially obscure become the ground on which an authentic and vital teaching practice can be construed. Our youngest child came into our family when he was 14 months old, unexpected and unannounced. Chessa was set adrift when his biological parents, close, longtime friends of ours, could no longer care for him. His grandparents kept him for a short time, and then he came to us. For a long time, he was an easy child, agreeable, eager to please, perhaps a bit compliant. He was never fussy, never demanding. On the other side, he never displayed much enthusiasm. His play lacked commitment. That's hard to envision. And his explorations of the world were tentative. He watched his new brothers at play, one of them almost 4 years older, and the other just half a year older, but he joined in rather reluctantly. He was subject to every sore throat and ear infection that came near him, and both his physical strength and his affect seemed always at low ebb. He was downcast, depressed. Later, his depression gave way to explosive anger. Often self-directed, he was clumsy, both physically and socially, and would frequently crash into people and things, often hurting himself or angering others, and afterward generally wonder what happened. Chessa also had qualities that would help him negotiate and take control of his life. One was dogged determination, a willingness to work at a task or challenge until he has succeeded. During a fundraiser for his swim team, when he was 10, he swam lap after graceless lap, the slowest on the team, but also the last to emerge from the water. When his mind was set, he never gave up, and he never gave in no matter what. Another quality was his keen intelligence and his steel trap memory. His report of events or conversations was filled with nuance and detail. And finally, he could be incredibly compassionate and unexpectedly generous. Each of these qualities, of course, could be experienced in two ways. His iron will could be seen as stubbornness or resoluteness, his memory as acute or obsessive, his sweetness as strong or weak. As he set off for first grade, he was painfully aware of the many ways Chessa might. We were painfully aware of the many ways Chessa might be experienced, of the many ways he could be seen as a student. There was his obstinacy, for example, and there was the matter of anger and temper and the highly visible issue of plowing into people. Who would his teacher see coming through the door? How would she know our wonderful child? We were lucky. Chessa's teacher was a young man named Kevin Sweeney who admired his strengths and quickly figured out interesting and clever ways to leverage these against his weaknesses. For example, he gave Chessa cleaning tasks almost every day. Not the routine stuff, but tasks that tapped into his workhorse nature. Chessa, could you wash these shelves this afternoon? Just move the paper over here and then use a bucket of soapy water and a sponge. This not only focused Chessa on a goal, but it made a worthwhile quality more visible to the other children and to himself, and this in turn made him a stronger, more accepted group member. Furthermore, it provided the teacher with a steady reminder of something to value in Chessa, a challenging child for much of the day. All of this came back to me when I was working with a group of 10-year-old boys in an urban public school. I showed them a simple structure for writing, a brief autobiographical sketch or poem. The first line is your first name, followed by a line of 3 words that describe you to yourself. The next line is something you love, then something you hate, something you fear, and something you wish for. The last line is your last name. I gave the kids an example. I am Martin, courageous, nonviolent warrior. I love all people. I hate oppression. I am afraid of ignorance. I wish for freedom. King. Hannibal pointed out that I had left out Luther, which was right, so we made the last line Luther King. Now they made a poem for themselves. I am Hannibal. Fluky but funny. I love the bulls. I hate being whipped. I am afraid of Freddie. I wish for Michael Jordan to come over. Johnson. I am Aaron, small black frightened. I love my mom. I hate being picked on. I am afraid of the raper man and the police. I wish for happiness. Blackwell. When I had asked his teacher if Aaron could join me for an hour on this morning, as he had on other occasions, she had practically pushed him out the door. He's no good today, she had said. His mind is wandering and he doesn't want to work. And I looked at Aaron again. He was small, frail really, and he did look frightened. He smiled a lot, but always apologetically looking down unsure. He was quiet, never initiating talk or play, always reacting. His face was streaked, his hair uncombed, his eyes were puffy and resting on large dark circles. I wondered, why is Aaron frightened? Who are the police in his life? What is the happiness he wishes for? As we talked about his poem and about some of my questions, I learned that the Raper Man was a large character in his life, someone Aaron could describe physically, even though he had never seen him. The Raper Man had huge hands and was ugly with big red bumps on his face. He drove an old wrecked car, and he was often sighted by other children on the walk from school to home. So Aaron and his little sister mainly ran home each day. The police loomed large. While he didn't know any of them himself, two of his brothers had had frequent encounters with the law. Aaron told me a long story about one brother, James, who had been falsely accused of gang membership and arrested in a playground for just being there. Aaron had visited James yesterday in Cook County Jail. He told me, and today James would go. He told me, and today James would go on trial for first-degree murder. My mom always says maybe he'll come home this week if the judge sees he didn't do it. No wonder his teacher said he's no good today. His mind is wandering and he doesn't want to work. I asked myself if I'd be any good with my own brother on trial for murder, or if I could concentrate on worksheets with all this going on. And then I think of his mother, and I wonder what her hopes are for Aaron in school. I think of her in light of our hopes for Cheza and our good fortune to have in having him known and understood by Kevin Sweeney. What could this mother tell any teacher about Aaron that would be of use to us? Would the teacher or anyone else in the school care? Would they find a way to teach him? When we teachers look out over our classrooms, what do we see? Half civilized barbarians, savages, a collection of deficits, or IQs or averages? Do we see fellow creatures? We see students in our classrooms, of course, but who are they? What hopes do they bring? What is the language of their dreams? What experiences have they had, and where do they want to go next? What interests or concerns them? How have they been hurt? What are they frightened of? What will they fight for? And what and whom do they care about? What is their bliss, their pain? When I began teaching, we were told that many of our students were culturally deprived. This became a strong germinal idea for some teachers, and cultural deprivation was being unearthed and remediated all over the place. We assumed it was an actual condition, an integral material part of some kids. Like freckles, it didn't take long, however, for cultural deprivation as a concept to come in for some serious and sustained questioning. In calling someone culturally deprived, is it the same as calling them not white, not middle class? Is Spanish a lower language than English? Is the implication then that some cultures are superior and others inferior? Or that some children have a culture and others do not? What is culture anyway? In time, the concept of cultural deprivation was discredited as patronizing and untrue, and it fell into disuse. Thank God. Unhappily, labeling students has become even more widespread in the intervening years. It is an epidemic in our schools, a toxic habit with no known limits. It's as if supervisors, coordinators, and administrators have nothing better to do than mumble knowingly about soft signs, attention deficit disorder, or low impulse control, and though all the rest of us stand around smiling, pretending to know what they're talking about. The categories keep splintering and proliferating, getting nuttier as they go. LDBDEHTAGEM8. It's almost impossible for teachers today not to see before them gifted and talented students, learning disabled youngsters, and children at risk. I recently asked a scholar who had just presented a major research paper at a professional conference on at risk students to give me a brief definition of at risk, using, I insisted, only Peter Rabbit English. He said flatly, Black or Hispanic, poor, and from a single parent household. At risk is simply cultural deprivation, recycled for today. And more important, at risk is no one's self definer. I've worked in tough situations forever and have never met a kid who said, Hi, I'm Maria and I'm at risk. The problem is this: in the human centered act of teaching, all attempts to create definitive categories lower our sights, misdirect our visions, mislead our intentions. Labels are limiting. They offer a single lens concentrated on a specific deficit when what we need are multiple ways of seeing a child's ever changing strengths. All the categories are upside down. They conceal more than they reveal. They are abstract when what they need is immediate and concrete. The focusing questions for effective teachers must be these: who is this person before me? What is the measure of her hope and hurt? What are his interests and areas of wonder? How does she express herself? And what is her awareness of herself as a learner? What effort and potential does she bring? These are the kinds of questions we need to attend to. If I were to brainstorm a list of things I can't do well, things I don't understand or care about, activities that make me seem important or incompetent, or feel ridiculous, I could fill a chalkboard in just a few seconds. Let's see, I can't type very well. I can't speak French. I don't fish. I can't fix the car. I can't play tennis. I don't understand golf. I don't know how a computer or television works. I can't read music. I'm a lousy at chess. That is true. I can't play the trumpet. I can't repair the refrigerator, and on and on. Most of these would be useful things to know. Each could, in fact, be interesting and worthwhile. Now imagine some school administrator or teacher constructing curriculum to correct these deficiencies in me. I might attend remedial auto shop 3 mornings a week, go to resource room, refrigerator maintenance, and TV repair on alternate days, take the slow French class every afternoon, and so on. The goal may well be to make me more skilled and a better person, but the result would likely also be alienation, lack of interest, and failure. You see, I have no interest in learning to fix cars. I simply don't care about it. I don't own a TV and have no burning desire to know how one works. I have no particular skill in refrigeration, no particular aptitude in foreign language or music. Most of this curriculum would be distant from me, and some of it would even frighten me. The tennis lessons, for example, would make me look like a fool in front of my classmates. All in all, this entire attempt to fix me would likely make me feel bad and could well drive me completely away from school. The list of my deficiencies, dramatically shortened here to preserve some shred of self-respect, is of course true, but inadequate. There is no distinction, for example, between items that might intimidate but also attract and fascinate me, such as using the computer well, and items that hold absolutely no allure, such as playing golf or fishing. Furthermore, this list tells you very little of importance about me. You don't know, for example, that I ride my bicycle to work every day and that I know a lot about bikes. You don't know that I love movies and jazz and baseball. You don't know that I am a good baker and an excellent inventive cook, or that I cook like I teach with some broad framework of planning but without strict recipes. You don't know that I found some nice baby eggplants at the market yesterday and I let them lead me into dinner, and that only afterward could I construct a recipe for interested guests, explaining how the eggplant made me think of ginger and how I then found some garlic and an onion, a bottle of old wine, and so on. Not only does the list of incompetencies fail to tell you anything of what I know or care about, it also doesn't tell you anything about my temperament or disposition of mind. That I tend to be supportive and nurturing, for example, and that I am an intrepid, sometimes meddling, interpersonal problem solver. It doesn't tell you anything about how I learn, that I read slowly, for example, and retain only what I have told someone else. As I look at it, the deficiencies list tells you almost nothing about me, about my experiences, needs, dreams, fears, skills, or know how. And as a teacher, it provides you with information of only distant peripheral value. It doesn't offer you any insight or clues into how you might engage me in a journey of learning or how you might invite me into your classroom as a student. In short, the list fails to answer the key question. Given what I now know, how shall I teach this person? The list makes me feel rotten as a learner. I want to feel strong and healthy, secure, independent, connected as a worthwhile member of the group. When these qualities are nurtured and supplied with opportunity, I can act with surprising courage. I can take criticism, be a good ally to others, face up to my shortcomings and failures, keep going against all odds, experiment in new realms. In other words, my ability to exercise my mind with hope and sureness is linked to my emotional state, my feelings, my affect. When they are disregarded, I, like most people, hold back, cringe a bit, and the possibility of a productive formal education narrows. All conscientious teachers need to ask themselves what they need to know in order to be successful with this kid and with this one and with this one. Surely knowledge of subject matter and the curriculum and the discipline is an important part of the answer. And of course, knowledge about the school and its expectations. And don't forget knowledge of yourself. But no less important is knowledge about the child. Knowledge and more. Knowledge about the context and circumstances of his or her life, family, community, culture, and so on. Knowledge of the society and the world we're initiating youngsters into. This is not only vast, but it's also dynamic and swirling and expanding and changing. In the odd, often upside down world of schools, we typically start in the wrong place. We start with what kids can't do and don't know. It's as if we brainstormed a list for each of them, as I did for myself, that we figured out what they don't understand or value, what they feel incompetent or insecure about, and we then developed a curriculum to remediate each deficiency. The curriculum is built on a deficit model. It is built on repairing weakness, and it is simply just doesn't work. It isn't that educators don't mean well. Youngsters do indeed need access to certain literacies and skills if they are able to function fully and well in our society. And it isn't as if there are no students who succeed. Children are learning all the time, and not just what we think we are teaching them. The irony is that students who tend to succeed in school learn in spite of, not because, of our treatments. And those who fail in school are subject to the most relentless and concentrated attack on their weaknesses, often to no avail. The framework for the almighty lesson plan, the daily classroom level reminder of this whole approach, neatly embodies the deficit approach. It is linear, one directional, incremental, and entirely outside the student. Lesson plans typically begin with behavioral objectives, as in students will understand vowel blends, or students will multiply double-digit numbers. They then describe the materials needed, the activities that will occur, and how it all fits together within some larger plan. It is all very neat, all seemingly objective. The problem is that this has nothing to do with how people learn. It never captures the complexity of classroom life or the idiosyncratic, tumultuous individual pathways to knowledge. Students will understand vowel blends. How about Eric over there by the window in the back of the class? He's thinking about what he's going to do later when he sees Brian. How about James, ambling aimlessly to the pencil sharpener again? He never does well in reading or on these worksheets anyway. The teacher experiences the problems but feels somewhat trapped. I've got 30 other children. I have to think of everyone, not just those not doing well. I try to work with them individually when I can, of course, but they have to make some effort. In any case, their grades will reflect both their efforts and what they learned. Exactly. Eric and James already knew they are bad students. They are already drifting, and all of this is simply confirmation. Operating as it does without reference to the students themselves, this deficiency-driven approach is self-justifying and closed. Some will learn and some will not. Some will work hard, others won't. Some will make it, and some will fall away. It's all quite predictable. If this conclusion is objectable, objectionable, and I believe it is entirely unacceptable to those of us engaged in teaching as a moral act or teaching as an intellectual act. There must be another approach. We must find ways to break with the deficit driven model, and we must move away from teaching as a way of attacking incompetencies. Teaching as uncovering perceived deficiencies and constructing micro units for repair. We must find a better way, a way that builds on strengths, experiences, skills, and abilities, a way that engages the whole person and guides that person to greater fulfillment and power. I am reminded of the plea of the Native American parent whose 5-year-old son had been labeled a slow learner. Wind Wolf knows the names and migration patterns of more than 40 birds. He knows there are 13 tail feathers on a perfectly balanced eagle. What he needs is a teacher who knows his full measure. Most teachers want to know the full measure of their students. We want to understand what motivates them and makes them tick, what engages and interests them. And we want to know why they act as they do. We want this to be more effective, to maximize those satisfying moments when we reach children and minimize the frustrations of seeing everything we try fall flat. And while we have been accustomed to scores and grades, we often want to know more than we can possibly learn by relying on an objective and personal standard, whether it's a grade level average, a test result, or a letter or number assigned to potential or achievement. Teachers need to be one part detective. We sift the clues children leave, follow the leads, and diligently uncover the facts in order to fill out and make credible the story of their growth and development. We need to be one part researcher, collecting data, analyzing information, testing hypotheses. We need to be one part world puzzle master, painstakingly fitting together the tiny pieces of some mammoth, intricate jigsaw of childhood. And we need to be all of this with a significant difference. Our story never ends with a neat conclusion. Our data are most unruly and insufficient, and our jigsaw puzzle is always incomplete because it is always fluid and always changing. Whatever truths we discover are contingent, our facts are tentative. This is because we are interested in children living, breathing, squirming, growing, moving, messy, idiosyncratic children. But when we have gained some worthwhile insight, just when we have captured some interesting essence, the children change, the kaleidoscope turns, and we must look again, even more deeply. We must find a way to ground our observations in many dimensions at once: intellectual, cultural, physical, spiritual, emotional. In looking more deeply, we must try to see beyond our own stereotypes and prejudices, beyond some notion of how children ought to behave, filtered through smoky, uncritical childhood memory. We must see beyond the unstated assumption driving most schools, the wacky idea that children are puny, inadequate adults, and that the job of education is to transport them as quickly as possible from that sorry state. We must look unblinkingly at the way children really are and struggle to make sense of everything that we see in order to follow along and to teach them. Theories of child development, including developmental psychology, can help by reminding us that childhood is a unique, distinct time and place in the growth of a person. It's going to talk about some theorists, so I'm going to stop here for a minute and I'll start a second video because this is a long chapter.